Dune Awakening's latest patch, 1.2.10, just went live on October 7th, and a lot of what we saw on the public test client is now reality. Instead of just listing what's changed, we're taking a closer look at the latest patch, breaking down what this patch fixed, what it actually improved for everyday players, where it might have gone wrong, and what's still keeping Dune Awakening from greatness. As expected, the community's divided, not because the patch missed the mark, but because it tries to touch everything at once. It's another example of Funcom's approach. Broad, ambitious updates that changes core aspects of just about every major system in the game, while still searching for that middle ground that pleases both PvE and PvP-focused players. Let's get into it. First things first, let's all take a moment of silence and drop an F in the comments to pay respects to a PvPer's best friend, the repair glitch. With the repair glitch finally being fixed, durability management is back to being a real concern. There haven't been any adjustments to how fast gear wears down, so long fights, especially ones with multiple deaths, can chew through your loadout fast. For players running multi-hour battles or chain fights in the desert, that's a steep cost that feels punishing rather than challenging. Vehicles can now be recovered if they're eaten or destroyed, with just a Solari and durability cost attached to the recovery process. For most players, it means you can actually keep pushing instead of calling it quits, even when you're solo. People who would log off after losing a Thopter are now sticking around. The durability hit keeps it from being free, but the core behavior shift is simple. Players aren't crashing out and logging off because of an Ornithopter loss. It cuts down on the punishment for exploring and taking risks, and finally eases those frustrating moments where a server glitch costs you your vehicle. Those unexpected server losses are notorious among players, and they're ultimately the real driver behind why this vehicle recovery system was added. In my last video, I analyzed how instanced loot set off a complete shift in Dune Awakening's PvP meta. Loot chests are no longer a one-person win. Everyone now gets their own loot roll. The old system only generated one set of loot per chest respawn, which created constant conflict over a single drop, instead of rewarding each player for their effort. And it finally gives smaller or newer squads a reason to push into labs and wrecks, instead of just watching one dominant team take everything. Because even if only one of you escapes, that's still loot you would never have gotten before. It's a real design correction that gets more players involved and keeps fights active longer. But the danger hasn't gone away, it's just moved. The extraction is the new battlefield. Players are camping exits, stairwells, and choke points more aggressively, because now everyone leaving has something worth taking. It's created a new layer of tension where survival doesn't end when the chest opens, but when you actually make it out. One of the most underrated improvements in this patch is vehicle visibility. You can now spot ornithopters from roughly 2 kilometers away, which addresses a core frustration from many farmers and PvE-focused players, who have been getting ganked by thopters that only popped in at the last second. The extra distance doesn't make you safe, but it does give you a real reaction window and enough time to alter your route. Hold position until airspace clears, or set up a counter instead of eating a surprise drop. That visibility bump is already changing how people move. Ornithopter attackers now have to commit earlier or use smarter approach vectors and altitude, because hovering just outside draw distance and diving in is now far less reliable. Defenders are calling incoming thopters sooner and starting air-to-air skirmishes before anyone reaches a crawler or spice field. In testing stations, ground squads are timing exits around clear skies, knowing they're visible on the way out. Ambushes still happen, especially at doors and stairwells, but the appear from nowhere angle is harder to pull off, and engagements tend to start earlier and at a longer range. The bank inventory jumped from 25 slots with 1500 volume to 500 slots with 30,000 volume in this patch. A huge lift that finally lets players park full kit sets, schematics, and bulk materials without playing inventory Tetris every session. It meaningfully reduces base trips and makes long-term planning actually viable in the long term. But there's still one obvious miss. The bank UI doesn't talk to vehicle cargo, meaning you can't deposit directly from an ornithopter while you're at the bank, which turns that 30,000 volume capacity into a hauling chore. Most players are using the exchange auction house terminal as a workaround, pulling items from the thopter into personal inventory at the kiosk, then jogging to the bank to stash them. But it's clunky, especially for high volume materials. The net effect is great storage with slow transfer. Having said that, the devs have publicly publicly acknowledged this limitation, and apparently they couldn't squeeze that feature into this patch due to time and resource constraints. They say the vehicle-to-bank transfer is actively being worked on and should make its way in shortly. One of the quality of life upgrades in patch 1.2.10 is the new replace mode in the construction tool. Now, instead of tearing down an existing building piece entirely and rebuilding from scratch, you can swap in a compatible piece to upgrade or change your structure more fluidly. According to the official patch notes, this lets you upgrade your base parts more cleanly, without losing the base layout or having to rewire connections. This change has already sparked positive reactions in the community. Builders are excited because replace mode reduces the friction of base evolution. You can gradually improve your defenses, aesthetics, or functional parts without destroying walls, floors, or walkways you already depend on. Many players see it as a smart step toward making base growth more organic, letting you refine your base as new building pieces drop rather than having to destroy and rebuild. One of the most disruptive changes in this patch is how the vehicle backup tool now blocks all interactions while it's equipped. Before, players could instantly pocket or deploy their ornithopter in a single motion, part of the natural rhythm of travel and extraction. Now you have to holster the tool first before doing anything with your vehicle. That extra step has completely broken the muscle memory that most players rely on after hundreds of hours in the desert. What used to be a smooth, instinctive action has turned into a clumsy process that often causes people to miss pockets, leave vehicles exposed, or fumble under pressure. And players aren't treating this as a small adjustment. They're calling it one of the patch's worst regressions. It slows down exfil timing, makes emergency takeoffs riskier, and generally adds frustration to a system that already demands precision. The fix doesn't add depth or balance, it just makes a core mechanic feel worse. Many longtime players say this one change alone makes movement feel heavier and less responsive, especially during chaotic PvP or when fleeing storms. Unless Funcom rethinks how the tool interacts with vehicle states, this remains one of the most glaring pain points in this update. Melee balance is the most divisive note in this entire patch. The update hit two of Melee's cornerstone abilities, Crippling Strike and Suspensor Blast, both of which have defined close quarters combat since early testing. Crippling Strike was always a meta-defining skill because it gave melee players a real way to force engagements. Landing it meant you could pin down a target, close distance, and punish ranged players who otherwise dictated every fight. But with patch 1.2.10, that control window has been gutted. The Crippling Strike debuff no longer slows enemies to a crawl. It now only blocks sprinting, letting opponents still walk or dash freely. And even when they do dash, it's cheaper now. The stamina cost increase under the debuff dropped from 100% to just 33%, which means opponents can chain multiple dodges and escape pressure instead of being locked in place. On paper, that sounds minor, but in practice, it destroys Melee's best setup tool. Fights that used to end with a decisive lockdown now turn into partial slows that range players can easily shrug off. What was once the ability that let Melee turn pressure into kills now feels like a light inconvenience at best. Suspensor Blast was the other half of that combo, a consistent way to punish movement or shut down an enemy's ability to sneak in a slow blade. It's been a meta utility skill because it allows melee users to interrupt momentum, creating those precious seconds to land follow-ups or reset positioning. The latest patch trimmed its effectiveness across the board. The debuff duration dropped from 6 seconds to 5, and its dash penalty was cut from doubling stamina cost to just a third more. Those numbers matter. Instead of locking targets down long enough to swing momentum, Suspensor Blast now buys barely enough time to breathe. What used to be a defining part of Melee's identity, forcing opponents to think before dodging or sprinting, has turned into a soft slowdown that barely changes engagements. Taken together, these changes have pushed Melee into one of its weakest states since launch. What little control Melee had over range advantage has been stripped down to unreliable tools that don't offset the gap in mobility, stamina, and reach. Across player discussions, you'll find the same sentiment. Melee builds feel punished for existing. Without a strong lockdown tool or meaningful way to create openings, even dedicated Melee mains are pivoting toward ranged or hybrid setups just to stay viable. The game's PvP meta, already heavily skewed toward ranged combat, is now leaning even harder in that direction, and Melee's once dangerous close quarters pressure has been replaced by a frustrating sense of chasing ghosts. The economic cleanup in this patch isn't subtle. It's a direct response to how badly duping has wrecked entire server economies. For weeks, players have been dealing with inflated prices, worthless trade hubs, hubs and markets completely flooded with duplicated currency. High-end items and schematics have become almost impossible to value, and smaller groups can't realistically participate in trading because the market has been distorted so badly from the top down. Fixing the duplication exploit, hopefully for good this time, will finally address the root cause of that instability, and for many players, it's the first sign that the in-game economy might actually recover. If this holds, the ripple effect could be massive. A stable market means materials, weapons, and schematics will start reflecting actual demand rather than exploit-driven inflation. It also helps reinforce the new loot systems, with more players able to extract real value from labs and wrecks. Wealth can start circulating instead of pooling in a handful of monopolies. Fights and trade will start happening for progress, not control. And for a game built around scarcity and competition, that shift could finally bring back the sense that effort in the field translates into tangible reward, not just frustration. If there's one theme that defines where Dune Awakening stands right now, it's that the foundation is strong, but the game still needs several key steps to evolve from a promising survival MMO into a great one. Patch 1.2.10 fixed a lot of systemic issues and brought quality of life upgrades across the board, but the next leap isn't about bug fixes or optimization. It's about giving players a reason to stay. That means more in-game content, better systems that respect player investment, and stronger tools for groups and server communities to thrive long-term. Instanced loot and better vehicle visibility gave players new incentives to explore, but the deep desert still lacks a true in-game loop. Once you've hit your crafting goals or secured enough spice, the options boil down to the same three activities: farm mats, farm spice, or PvP. The world needs more layered progression, dynamic contracts, persistent world events, or evolving objectives that build towards something bigger. Without those, the desert feels like a backdrop rather than a living system. We need always available, goal-driven activities that would turn downtime into meaningful playtime and make exploration as rewarding as combat. Fixing the repair glitch didn't heal the economy. The long-term duping issue we just discussed is the real cause for the current inflated economy on many servers. But fixing the repair glitch did expose how punishing gear durability actually is. Without that repair glitch safety net, even a few long sessions can burn through top-tier gear faster than most players can afford to replace it. Instead of forcing people to roll loot drops hoping for the weapon they need or want, the smarter move would be a legitimate full repair option. By making it very mat expensive, that would at least give players a path to preserve their progress. It's better for player morale and keeps high-end combat gear relevant rather than disposable. The current 4-player party cap has outlived its purpose. Dune Awakening's combat and world design already encourages coordination through base defense, carrier runs, and deep desert PvP in general, but the system splits larger groups into disconnected squads. Expanding the cap to at least 8 players would make a massive difference for guild coordination and for content creators like me trying to run organized events. It's not about turning the game into a Zerg fest, it's about making teamwork viable at the scale the game already demands. Finally, population is the one bottleneck that undermines every system in the game. Too many servers feel empty outside of peak hours, leaving entire regions of the map inactive. The economy can't stabilize, PvP can't thrive, and even exploration loses meaning without people. Merging underpopulated servers isn't just about improving queue times, it's about bringing life back to the game as a whole. A single unified player base per deep desert would make every fix Funcom rolls out actually matter, turning Dune Awakening into a game that feels alive again instead of a collection of fading outposts. So after everything in this patch, the fixes, the tweaks, and the missed opportunities, we're starting to see the shape of what Dune Awakening wants to be. Patch 1.2.10 is one of the most meaningful updates the game has had so far. It fixes long-standing frustrations like vehicle loss, boosts performance, and tightens up a lot of the systems that felt half-finished at launch. But at the same time, it highlights exactly why the community is still divided. Because even with progress, there's still an emptiness at the core. The deep desert is massive and beautiful, but the sense of purpose inside it still hasn't caught up to its scale. What players are asking for isn't unrealistic. They want systems that respect their time, a reason to log in beyond maintenance chores, and content that keeps the world feeling alive day after day. Funcom is clearly listening. You can see that in the direction of these updates. But now they need to take the next step. Merge the servers, rebalance durability, expand the endgame significantly. If they can pull that off, this game could go from being a niche survival sandbox with potential to something truly special universal and long-lasting. Thanks for watching this breakdown of Dune Awakening's newest patch. I multi-stream Dune Awakening as well as new releases across 7 platforms, so no matter where you watch, you can catch me live. I also create content around Dune Awakening as well as the state of the gaming industry as a whole. If you found this breakdown useful, make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe. It helps me a ton, and it keeps you up to date on everything that I'm doing. Finally, my Dune Awakening guild Unhinged is currently recruiting both PvP and PvE players. Our North American guild is on the Solution Bowl server. If you want consistent PvP groups and want to get off your dead server, go to unhinged.gg and join Unhinged. Finally, and as always, remember, it's only GG when you win.